Welcome to Conspiracy Files. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we're exploring the population control theory. Some believe powerful elites are secretly working to reduce the global population through vaccines, sterilization, or economic control. Others argue it's all paranoia, fueled by fear and mistrust. Is there a hidden agenda, or is this just another conspiracy myth? Let's dive into the facts, theories, and controversies surrounding this debate. Stay tuned. Throughout history, concerns about population growth have sparked debates and policies, with some arguing that unchecked population increases can strain resources, disrupt economies, and exacerbate environmental damage. The modern form of the population control theory is often linked to the eugenics movement, which emerged in the early 20th century. Eugenics, a belief in improving the human race through selective breeding or sterilization, sought to reduce what its proponents saw as undesirable traits in the human population. In the early 1900s, eugenics gained traction in both the United States and Europe, particularly among academics and social reformers. Some leaders argued that controlling who could reproduce was necessary to ensure the survival and prosperity of society. This idea found its most infamous expression in Nazi Germany, where eugenics was taken to horrific extremes with forced sterilizations and genocide. However, after World War II, the eugenics movement lost much of its credibility due to its association with atrocities. Yet, the fear that unchecked population growth could lead to social collapse didn't vanish. In the 1960s and 70s, figures like Paul Ehrlich, author of The Population Bomb, warned that overpopulation was an imminent global crisis. These fears spurred the creation of family planning programs, particularly in developing countries, which aimed to curb population growth through birth control distribution and education. While these programs were largely well-intentioned, some critics argue they were too coercive, infringing on the reproductive rights of individuals. This concern about population control resurfaced in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, with new methods of contraception, abortion, and sterilization becoming more accessible globally. The rise of multinational organizations like the United Nations, with its goals around sustainable development, was accompanied by increasing scrutiny of whether such institutions were attempting to impose population control measures on sovereign nations. The belief in a hidden agenda to control population growth reached mainstream attention as influential figures, including philanthropists and business leaders, began to fund and support initiatives aimed at reducing population numbers in specific regions. Bill Gates, for instance, became a central figure in this theory after his involvement in global health initiatives, particularly in Africa, which led to accusations that vaccinations funded by his foundation were secretly part of a larger agenda to sterilize populations or reduce birth rates. Gates has repeatedly denied these claims, asserting that his efforts are focused solely on improving public health. While these concerns may seem like modern-day fears, the roots of the population control theory run deep in human history. Whether driven by eugenics, environmentalism, or concerns about resource scarcity, population control remains a powerful and often controversial theme in political and social discourse. This theory taps into our primal fears about scarcity, power, and survival. It speaks to a deep-seated anxiety that some people, particularly those with wealth and influence, might use their position to dictate who gets to live and who doesn't. As we delve further into this theory, we'll examine the evidence that both supports and refutes these claims, exploring how this fear of manipulation continues to shape global conversations about health, wealth, and equality. At the heart of the population control theory lies a collection of claims and events that, for many, seem to point to a deliberate, orchestrated effort to reduce the world's population. One of the most compelling arguments centers around the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's involvement in global health initiatives. With billions of dollars invested in projects related to vaccines, reproductive health, and family planning, critics argue that these efforts could be part of a larger strategy to control population growth in developing countries, particularly in Africa. A key element that fuels this theory is the funding of mass vaccination campaigns, which some claim are a covert method of sterilizing individuals. Conspiracy theorists often point to Gates' own statements about reducing population growth as evidence of his true intentions. In a 2010 TED Talk, Gates mentioned how vaccines, healthcare, and reproductive health are among the top ways to reduce population growth. Although Gates was speaking about improving overall public health, this comment has been interpreted by some as a thinly veiled reference to population control measures. Further fueling these claims is the presence of sterilization in certain family planning programs. In India, for example, millions of women have been sterilized as part of government-backed programs aimed at curbing population growth. Some argue that organizations like the Gates Foundation are indirectly supporting such programs by funding global health initiatives without sufficient oversight. The presence of sterilization in these programs, even in the absence of direct evidence linking the Gates Foundation to such practices, raises concerns about the broader implications of population control policies in developing nations. Additionally, the influence of powerful organizations like the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, is often cited as evidence of a global agenda. The UNFPA, which works to promote reproductive health and family planning, has been accused by some conspiracy theorists of pushing for population control policies that prioritize limiting births, particularly in developing nations. This has led to suspicions that influential entities, such as the Gates Foundation and the UN, may be working together to reduce population growth under the guise of providing aid. The theory also points to historical programs that, critics argue, have been the precursors to modern population control efforts. The eugenics movement, with its roots in the early 20th century, is often invoked as the precursor to these current practices. In the United States, the eugenics movement led to forced sterilizations and restrictions on immigration based on racial and genetic grounds. While these policies were discredited after World War II, some believe that the principles of eugenics have resurfaced under a new guise, this time framed as global health initiatives. Conspiracy theorists argue that the modern-day focus on overpopulation mirrors past fears with the same underlying motivation to control certain populations deemed undesirable. As we analyze these claims, it's important to recognize the legitimate goals of many organizations involved in global health and family planning. While the evidence may seem convincing to some, these efforts often focus on improving healthcare, reducing maternal mortality, and increasing access to contraception, all of which are essential components of sustainable development. However, the fact that these initiatives sometimes intersect with the population control theory means that these well-meaning endeavors are often viewed through a lens of suspicion, and the debate surrounding them is far from settled. While the population control theory has its proponents, many experts, critics, and even those within the organizations accused of pushing such agendas vehemently disagree with these claims. They argue that the conspiracy theory rests on a series of misconceptions, selective interpretations, and a lack of understanding about the broader context of global health efforts. The common argument made by skeptics is that the programs spearheaded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the UN, and other organizations are not about reducing population numbers through manipulation, but about improving health outcomes and empowering people. One major point of contention is the belief that vaccination programs or health initiatives are somehow covert population control efforts. Critics of the conspiracy theory argue that these programs are about saving lives, not limiting them. Vaccines, for example, are responsible for eradicating diseases such as polio, smallpox, and measles in many parts of the world. In addition to saving millions of lives, vaccination efforts can also prevent future generations from enduring the same suffering. Health experts often point out that there is no credible scientific evidence to suggest that vaccines have any form of sterilizing effect, as is often claimed by conspiracy theorists. In fact, vaccines have been pivotal in improving public health, with the World Health Organization, WHO, calling immunization one of the greatest achievements in global health. The funding provided by organizations like the Gates Foundation is often viewed by critics of the theory as a humanitarian effort, The foundation's focus on addressing global health challenges, such as maternal mortality, infectious diseases, and malnutrition, is frequently highlighted as part of a broader goal to improve quality of life, not control population growth. In this view, Bill Gates' comments about population control during his TED Talk are seen as a call for investment in public health strategies that can create a more sustainable world, not as a veiled threat to reduce populations. Further skepticism comes from experts who highlight the inconsistency in the theory itself. For example, critics argue that the logistics of executing a secretive global population control agenda would be incredibly difficult. The coordination required to carry out such a large-scale operation, involving numerous countries, organizations, and stakeholders, seems implausible to many. Not only would this require an immense amount of secrecy, but it would also involve coordination among governments, which in itself would be extremely difficult due to the diverse political landscapes across the globe. In fact, some suggest that the rise of conspiracy theories surrounding population control may be rooted in misunderstanding or misinformation about the nature of international development work. Many global health efforts, including those focusing on reproductive health, are intended to empower individuals, particularly women, to make their own decisions about family planning and healthcare. By offering access to contraception, healthcare, and education, these programs aim to give people the tools they need to manage their lives, not dictate how many children they should have. Moreover, another critique is that the theory tends to ignore the economic, social, and environmental factors that drive population growth and distribution. In regions like sub-Saharan Africa, where population growth is the highest, factors such as poverty, lack of education, and limited access to healthcare contribute far more to population growth than any external efforts to influence birth rates. Lastly, some point to the lack of any direct evidence supporting the notion that Bill Gates or other philanthropists are actively pursuing a nefarious population control agenda. Skeptics argue that without concrete evidence, such as documents, internal communications, or credible testimonies, the conspiracy remains largely speculative and rooted in fear and distrust of powerful institutions. Instead of focusing on unfounded accusations, they suggest that efforts should be directed toward ensuring that the real challenges facing developing nations, such as poverty, disease, and inequality, are addressed transparently and effectively. The population control conspiracy theory resonates deeply within various cultural, political, and social contexts. It taps into a growing mistrust of powerful elites, governments, and global institutions, especially in an age of heightened awareness around inequality, privacy, and surveillance. For many, the idea that such an agenda could exist is not so far-fetched, given the increasing role of multinational organizations in shaping public policies and the global conversation around health, economics, and governance. Culturally, the theory plays into fears of government overreach and a loss of personal freedoms. In many societies, particularly in the West, there has been a long-standing suspicion of governmental power, particularly when it comes to individual rights. The idea that certain organizations might be using health initiatives to manipulate populations strikes a deep chord with those who already feel marginalized or disillusioned by the perceived control that larger institutions have over daily life. For some, these fears have been amplified by real-world events like surveillance revelations, the spread of misinformation, and economic inequality, which contribute to an environment where such a theory feels plausible. Politically, the conspiracy theory finds fertile ground in times of polarization. When trust in traditional political structures and elected officials erodes, people often turn to alternative explanations for complex issues. In the case of population control, it's not just about a general fear of overpopulation or environmental collapse. It's also about skepticism toward the motivations of powerful individuals or organizations who influence policy on a global scale. Bill Gates, in particular, has become a polarizing figure due to his philanthropic efforts, tech empire, and outspoken views on public health. For some, his rise as a global health advocate has been met with suspicion, particularly as they see it as part of a larger agenda to control world populations. This perception is fueled by the perception that the wealth and power of individuals like Gates give them an outsized influence on global policy, which many believe should be questioned. Socially, the theory resonates with groups that have historically faced disenfranchisement and systemic inequality. Populations in impoverished areas, particularly in developing nations, might view international health programs with suspicion, as they've often been the recipients of foreign aid or intervention that has at times been mismanaged or poorly executed. The theory plays into a narrative of exploitation, where powerful entities from wealthier nations impose their will on those less powerful, often with hidden agendas. These concerns can amplify distrust of foreign aid and other international efforts, as these programs are seen not as benevolent acts, but as tools of control masked as charity. In this context, the conspiracy theory serves as a lens through which to understand historical patterns of colonialism where external powers sought to reshape and control populations for their own benefit. The theory also benefits from the broader psychological effect of seeking patterns and explanations for complex issues. Population control, as a concept, simplifies the vast, complex problems of global inequality, resource distribution, and environmental strain. By focusing on an alleged coordinated effort to reduce population size, proponents of the theory offer a clear, albeit controversial, explanation for why certain issues persist, such as poverty, resource scarcity, and disease. The theory provides a way to make sense of the overwhelming complexity of global crises, pointing to an orchestrated, rather than random cause. Furthermore, the rise of social media and online platforms has created spaces for these theories to thrive. In echo chambers, where information often circulates without scrutiny, conspiracy theories find an eager audience. The spread of the population control theory through these platforms has amplified voices that might otherwise be marginalized, helping to shape an alternative narrative that challenges mainstream ideas about health, governance, and global development. This environment creates a cycle where fear and skepticism breed further distrust, allowing the theory to grow and evolve in the minds of its adherents. In this sense, the theory is not just about population control, but about reclaiming a sense of agency in a world that feels increasingly difficult to navigate. It gives individuals a way to make sense of their place in the world, particularly when larger societal forces seem distant and beyond their control. One of the more speculative and fringe aspects of the population control theory ventures into the realm of advanced, even secretive technology and global manipulation. Some proponents believe that there may be more direct, technologically sophisticated methods at play when it comes to controlling populations. These ideas often delve into the notion that not only is there an agenda to limit population growth, but that it could be happening through methods that go beyond conventional means. A particularly bold fringe angle suggests that technology, including artificial intelligence and biotechnology, could be used to engineer both human behavior and population dynamics. These ideas hinge on the notion that global elites or organizations could be researching ways to modify human genetics or behavior through seemingly innocuous interventions, such as vaccines, food, or environmental factors. This view links into concerns about genetic modification and designer babies, where some believe that those in power could create a genetically perfect society based on desired traits and abilities. There's a belief among some theorists that population control could be achieved by subtly altering the genetic makeup of future generations to reduce certain traits or behaviors, and perhaps even certain populations to balance the planet's resources. Another speculative angle ties the theory into broader concerns over surveillance and control. The idea is that global entities may use widespread data collection to monitor and ultimately influence population patterns. The theory suggests that technologies like 5G networks, surveillance systems, and even genetic tracking could be used to target specific groups or influence reproductive choices, either by direct action or manipulation, through subtle cues in society. Some proponents of this perspective argue that the collection of data isn't just for commercial purposes or to build better technology, but that it's part of a larger strategy to control human life, down to the level of personal decisions. One of the more fantastical angles ties the idea of population control into the realm of extraterrestrial influence, or secret government projects. In this view, there are those who believe that extraterrestrial forces, in collaboration with global elites, are working to reduce the population of the planet in preparation for some larger cosmic event or societal transformation. These theorists often cite mysterious government projects, classified information, and obscure references to extraterrestrial life that suggest a hidden agenda tied to off-world entities. The theory proposes that Earth's population is being deliberately controlled, possibly to either prevent overcrowding for some interplanetary plan or to ensure that certain types of people are preserved for a future where humanity must either coexist with or be protected from alien visitors. A further speculative angle turns to the psychological manipulation of the masses. This idea posits that global institutions might use mass media and entertainment to indirectly promote ideas about family size, reproduction, and even death in ways that steer societal trends toward lower birth rates. The theory suggests that entertainment, advertising, and political messaging could be utilized to shape public attitudes toward having children, especially in wealthier nations. With influential figures, whether in entertainment, politics, or business, subtly encouraging limited family growth, there is a belief among some theorists that the elite are indirectly nudging people into compliance with a broader population reduction agenda. While these fringe perspectives often stretch the boundaries of plausibility, they underscore the depth and reach of concerns about population control. In a world where technology, government policy, and global influence seem to intertwine in ways not always transparent, these more speculative theories provide an outlet for those who feel that there is much more going on beneath the surface. Whether it's genetic manipulation, extraterrestrial involvement, or media-driven subconscious control, these theories highlight an ongoing sense of uncertainty about the direction of humanity's future and the forces that might be shaping it from the shadows. The idea of population control has a long history, tied deeply into human concerns about sustainability, resources, and power. At the core of the theory is the belief that global elites, whether government officials, corporations, or other influential figures, are actively working to manage, reduce, or control the world's population in some way. From the notion of sterilization programs and limiting family size, to more fantastical ideas involving technology and extraterrestrial influence, the theory has evolved, taking on new shapes and forms with each passing decade. What resonates most with those who support the theory is the feeling of distrust towards powerful institutions. The complexities of global politics, along with the history of covert operations and state-sanctioned experiments, provide fertile ground for conspiratorial thinking. Whether it's fears about the commodification of human life, the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few, or suspicions about the true motivations behind technological advancements, people are often left questioning what's really going on behind the scenes. Critics of the population control theory, on the other hand, argue that it oversimplifies complex global challenges. They point to the advancement of medical care, the efforts to reduce poverty, and the promotion of family planning as positive steps toward bettering the world without sinister ulterior motives. They see the global push for sustainable development as part of a humanitarian effort, not a hidden agenda. For them, the concerns about population control reflect a misunderstanding of modern demographic trends and the benefits of responsible growth, rather than a conspiracy. Still, despite the skepticism from critics, the theory's persistence speaks to broader fears about the future. In a world of growing inequality, environmental crises, and increasing surveillance, it's not hard to see why some might feel that there are forces conspiring to reshape society to their benefit. And as technology continues to advance, from genetic engineering to global data collection, the lines between fact and speculation blur even further. Some argue that it's precisely the intersection of these technologies with global power that makes the theory so compelling and terrifying. Theories like this also tap into deeper psychological currents, tapping into a fear of control and loss of autonomy. The idea that the population could be managed, directed, or even limited without the knowledge of the general public resonates with those who feel powerless against global systems that seem to shape their lives. These theories fuel a desire for transparency, for accountability, and for the assurance that individuals and societies still have a say in their own destinies. While there's no definitive proof to substantiate the more extreme claims of the population control theory, it's clear that the questions it raises are significant. Whether we're discussing the impact of corporate interests, the power dynamics at play in global politics, or the ethical implications of technology, the theory touches on a wide range of concerns that are very much alive in today's world. It's a reminder that even in a time of unprecedented access to information, uncertainty still prevails. And perhaps that uncertainty is what makes theories like this so enduring. Because in a world where information is often hidden or obscured, the line between the possible and the impossible becomes harder to define. As we've seen throughout this episode, the population control theory offers a complex and multifaceted perspective on the way the world operates, and it challenges us to ask deeper questions about the balance of power and resources. The ultimate truth may be elusive, but the conversation it sparks is undeniably important in understanding our world and the forces that shape it. Thanks for tuning in to the Conspiracy Files podcast. We're here with brand new episodes every Wednesday. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to follow us and be sure to rate, review, and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. You can also reach out anytime by emailing us at contact@theconspiracyfilespodcast.com. Until next time, and remember, the truth is out there. If you found this episode fascinating and want to dive even deeper into the world of conspiracy theories, consider subscribing for exclusive access to the material they don't want you to hear. As a subscriber, you'll get banned episodes deemed too controversial for mainstream platforms, members-only bonus episodes, not available anywhere else, extended director's cut versions of your favorite episodes, early access to new content before it's released to the public, and much more. Thank you for your support. The link is in the description below. Join now.